Start sharing the screen. Please let me know once the screen is visible. I hope the screen is visible right now.
Yes, yes.
So today let's start with understanding the views of Power BI, basically the overall graphical user interface of Power BI, and let's start getting the data into Power BI, and then we'll start with transforming the data in Power BI. Okay, so I have an instance of Power BI open in my computer. So basically, what I've done is just you can just type PBI in here, okay, and if you type that, it'll just be okay. So you can just click on this, and if it's installed in your system, it'll just open up, as simple as that. Okay. So once we are into Power BI, see, mainly there are three views in Power BI. Okay, one is this one, the report view. The second one is the table view, where you can see the tables that are in Power BI. And thirdly, there is a model view in Power BI where you can see the model view of Power BI. Now, when I say model view of Power BI, what I mean is in the model view, you will be actually be able to see the relationship between the tables, how the different tables are joined in this particular view. So this is what the model view means, okay? And there's also one more view called as DAX queries, but we'll learn about this later, okay? So mainly there are three views. One is the report view, where you can see the visuals. Second, the table view, where you can see the tables. And thirdly, the model view, where you can see the relationship between the different tables that you have in your model. Okay. Now, on the top side, you can see different toolbars. One is the toolbars which are in the home. Then there are toolbars which are in the insert and the modeling and view and optimize, and various things are there. Okay, but we'll gradually try to learn what each and every one of this means. Okay, and meanwhile, on the right hand side panel, what you can see is if you brought any tables in here or in Power BI, they'll be loaded in the data view. In the data, you'll be seeing those table names. Okay, and there's also one more thing which is also very important, that is the visual pane. Now in the visualizations pane, you will be having the different types of visualizations that are available for you to build in Power BI. As simple as that. Okay. So let's try to understand how to get the data into the Power BI in the first place. Okay. So first of all, what we need to do is to get the data, you need to actually click on this icon, that is get data. And when you click on get data, okay, when I click on get data, so let's say if I want to bring some CSV or Excel file, okay, so I can check whether that option is available here itself. Now, if you see, there's a CSV or text file option which is available here. So I'll click directly here. And once I do that, it'll ask me to provide the path to the file I'm referring to. Okay, so I'll give it a path. Okay, and yeah, this, let's say this is one of the CSV file that we want to bring in. Okay, so I click on this and then I'll click on open. Okay. And once that is done, it'll give me a kind of preview of the type of file that I'm trying to bring in. Okay, so if you look at this, it will just give me the preview based on the first 200 rows of the data set. Okay, and it will show me what are the column headers, what kind of data type does the records are having. Okay, and then next thing is it will give me the option to either directly load the data into Power BI, or if I think a bit of transformation is needed into this data, then I can click on transform data and it can take me to Power Query Editor. Now, Power Query Editor is the in-house ETL tool within Power BI. Okay, so if I directly load this, then what will happen? I'll show you. Look, it is loading the data. Okay, and then it has some errors, but it will still load the data. Okay, I'll just close this. Okay, and now if you see this table, you can see in this right pane. Okay, and if you want to see this table just like view the table in the Excel sheets, you can definitely go to the table view. Okay, and in the table view, you can see this table. Okay, you can see all the columns and all the rows the way they are available. Okay, so this is what happens when you directly load the data. But now let me show you what happens when you click on transform data. Okay, so I'll go to home now. I'll try to get that file once again. I'll click on text bar CSV. I'll select the same file, orders 2018, which is a CSV file. I'll click on open, and then again it will give me a preview. And now instead of directly loading the data, I'll click on transform data. And once that happens, a new window will open. Now, if you see, if I click on, if I hover over this Power BI icon, there are two windows which are open. One is Power BI Desktop, and the second window that has opened is called Power Query Editor. Okay. Now, the Power Query Editor, as I told earlier, is the ETL tool within Power BI, or the in-house ETL tool within Power BI, where you can transform the data. Transform the data in the sense, let's say, if I want to delete this column, okay, I can simply click on remove the column and that column will be deleted. So I'm talking about these kind of transformations. You can keep the columns or rows that you need. You can delete the columns or rows that you don't want. And there are more transformations that can be done. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, and let's keep the Power Query Editor for later. Okay, so let's now just focus on how to bring the data from different sources. So first things first, this is how we bring the data from the CSV or text file. Okay, I'll just discard the changes. Okay, and now let's try to bring the data from the Excel sheet. Okay, so I'll have to click on get data, and then I can click directly Excel workbook here. And then in the same folder, I have one Excel sheet, okay, which is called as store cost. I'll click on that. I'll click on open. And then within that Excel workbook, it will show me how many sheets are there. If there is one sheet, it will show me only one sheet. If there are multiple sheets in the Excel workbook, it will show me multiple sheets for preview. So I'll click on this. If I click on this, it will give me a preview of what kind of data it has in it. Okay. And again, based on if whether I click on load or I click on transform data, I'll be taken to Power BI Desktop or Power Query Editor, as simple as that. Now let's just directly load this file, as simple as that. Okay. So this is how we get the flat files, or basically CSV or Excel sheets into Power BI. Okay. Now let's also try to understand how to bring the data from a database into Power BI. Okay. So for that, the first thing that you need to make sure is you need to make sure that the database is in running condition. Okay. So for example, I have this particular uh, uh, database open in my system. This is the SQL Server, okay? And this is basically SSMS, that is SQL Server Management Studio, okay? And within this, I have many databases. If I just want to show you this has the AdventureWorks 2012 and AdventureWorks 2022. And if I just want to see the type of table it has, okay, let me show you the preview of one particular table, which I think I'll be bringing it into Power BI. So let's say sales order detail. Okay, I'll just take a preview of this into SQL. So I'll just select the top 1000 rows. just for the preview of that. Okay. So yeah, this is what the table looks like. Okay. So it has these many columns. Okay. And basically this is the table. Okay. And now what I want to do is I want to bring this table into Power BI. So let's try to understand how to do that. Okay. So first things first, when you want to connect to a SQL Server database, you should know the server name. So in my case, can you see this thing? Desktop-EU26JC1 slash SQL Express. This is the SQL server name. Okay. So that's what I have noted it down in some place. Okay. And the database name in this case is AdventureWorks 2012. Okay. So let's try to make use of these credentials to bring the data into Power BI. So first of all, what I need to do is again click on Get Data. Then I need to click on SQL Server. Okay. And let's say if you're trying to bring, if you are trying to search for a source and that source is not listed in here, then what you can do, you can click on More so that you will be taken to this sheet where all the sources from where the data can be brought into Power BI is listed. Okay, so here I can type maybe SQL Server. Okay, so that will be listed here. So I'll click on SQL Server Database. I'll click on Connect. And after that, as I said, you need to mention the server name. Okay, and the server name in my case is this. Okay, and let me again just remind you, for this to happen, your SQL server should be in running condition. Okay, so I'll mention the server name first. And after that, I need to mention the database name. And the database name is AdventureWorks 2012. Let me just confirm it. Yeah, AdventureWorks 2012. And then there are two connectivity modes. One is import mode and another is direct query mode. We'll talk about that later. But currently we'll bring the data into import mode. Okay. And then just click on OK. Then what will happen? It will list out the tables that are present in that particular database. That is, if you look at the SQL server, under this database, these many tables are present. Okay. These many tables and views. And the same will be enlisted in this preview. And the table that I want to bring in here is sales order detail. So what is it? It's here. So I'll click on this, select this. Okay. And again, if you see, you have the preview of the data which is coming from that particular table. So I'll for now directly load it into Power BI. And once you do that, it will actually be loaded into Power BI. Okay. And then you can see that table in the table view, that is sales order detail. Okay. And all the columns that you were able to see in this SQL Server, that is these columns, the same columns are enlisted into Power BI now. Okay. So this is how you bring the data from SQL Server into Power BI. Any doubts till now, people? Yes. Fine, I'll take that as no. Then let's proceed. Okay. So now there's one more thing that can be done. Okay. Yes, you want to say something? Okay. So yeah, while we bring the data from SQL Server into Power BI, or basically when we bring the data from any database for that matter, what we can do is we can write the SQL queries also in Power BI so that we can filter out the data before it comes into Power BI. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay. So let's say we are bringing this particular table, right? Now this table is the sales, sales order detail table, okay? Sales order detail table. And let's say it has, yeah, it has this particular column called as order quantity, okay? Now let's presume that we want the data where the order quantity is greater than or equal to 5. We don't want the rest of the records. We want only the records where the order quantity is greater than or equal to 5. So that's what we want to bring it in Power BI. So how to do that? Let me show you. Okay. So I'll go back to the Power BI instance. Okay. And then first of all, let me delete this particular table, that is sales.sales order detail, which I have already brought in here. And if you want to delete something out of this, just click on the three dots and just delete it from the model. Click on as, it will be deleted. Okay. Now let's try to bring that data again. And while bringing that data this time, we'll try to apply the filter by writing the SQL query, a simple SQL query basically. So I'll click on get data. I'll click on SQL server. I need to mention the server name. That is this one, which I stored here. For you, the server name will be different, people. So that you need to be careful about. So I'll click on that and I'll just paste it here. And I'll click and I'll write the database name. That is Adventure Works 2012. Okay. And then I need to click on the advanced options. Once this is done, I can write the SQL Server query here. Okay. So what's my query? In my case, the order quantity should be greater than or equal to 5. So what I can write, select all the records. So it's far from the table name is, let me check, sales order detail. Okay. Yeah. So let me write the same, sales dot sales order detail. So let's start from sales order detail. Where, yeah, where, where what? Can anyone help me? Just look at this. Where? No idea. Where
Uh, order quantity greater than 5.
order quantity greater than or equal to 5. Okay. And that's it. This is the query that I want to execute. Okay. And now if I click on OK, just see what happens. Now if you see the preview it is giving us before bringing the data into Power BI. Look, the order quantity, if you look at, the minimum value is 5. There's nothing lower than that. Okay. And if I load this data now, you can see for yourself, it will be loaded as a query 1. You can rename it. I'll just double click on this so that it can be renamed. I'll simply mention it as sales table. Okay. That's it. And if I want to have a look at the data which is there in it, I can go to the table view. And in the table view, again, I need to click on the sales table. And then if you look at this particular table now, the values that are there in the order quantity, if you just click on this drop down, you will be seeing all the values that are present in it. And the thing you can see here or notice here is that the minimum value that is available here is what? 5. And that is because the condition that you mentioned before bringing the data into Power BI. Okay. So this is how you can bring the data from a database, like let's say SQL Server database, into Power BI. Is it clear, people? Any doubts till now?
Sir,
Okay.
if any complex query is there where I'm get data through city, multiple cities, So those query I'm run on SSMS, and all that query I'm copy paste here in Power BI. So that query is run or like
Yeah, that also can be run in this. Okay, not a problem. Okay, but I'll tell you what the best practice is. Okay, see what happens is in SQL Server, we have many tables. Okay, and as you mentioned, okay, the query, I mean, you are creating a view, right, by writing many CTs. Okay, the better thing to do is you can create that view in SQL Server itself. Okay, store it as a view and bring that view directly into Power BI. That will be even better. Hopefully you are getting what I'm talking about, right?
right, sir.
Okay, so that ultimately you just need to select that view from the SQL Server while bringing the data into Power BI. Okay, it becomes much easier. Okay, and the thing is that view you can use for multiple purposes. Whenever you want to get such data into Power BI, you just click on that view and bring that view instead. Okay, so that also is a feasible option. Okay, so yeah, and let me just show you how to bring the data from another database, which is almost similar to what we do. Okay, it's almost similar to for every database basically. Okay, let me just try to bring the data from MySQL now. I need to click on get data. I need to check whether MySQL is available here. It's not available, so I need to click on more. And then I need to check the MySQL database. It's available here. And if you are unable to find it here, you just click on the search bar, the database name. So it will be available. So MySQL database is what I want to connect with. And again, you need to make sure that the MySQL server is running in here. Okay. So I'll just, I'll just try to bring some table from this database. Then let's say the world database. I'll try to bring some table from. Okay. So for MySQL server name, you need to again enter its server name. So in my case, it is this, and this, and the database name is world database. Let me just check it once again. Okay, and I'll click on OK. Yeah, now you see the tables which are there in this particular database that are available here also to be brought into Power BI. So let's say if I click on world.city, it gives me the preview of the table that the world.city is. Okay, basically it has city's name, country, code name, district name, the population of the city, and the world country. This is basically the details from this table basically. Okay, so if I click on this, then again it will give me the data from this table. Okay, now let me just try bringing the world.country itself. Okay, so if I click on load, then that table will be directly loaded into Power BI. And if you want to have a look at what kind of table that is, you can go to the table view, click on world country, and this is the kind of table that we have brought it into Power BI. So it has the name of the country, the code of the country, the continent that it belongs to, the region that it belongs to, the surface area. I think this is in terms of square kilometer. And then the year it got the independence and the population, life expectancy, and many other details. Okay. So this is how basically you bring the data from any database into Power BI. Let's say if you want to bring it from Oracle database. So then you need to just click on more and then select the Oracle DB. Yeah, so this. And again, if you want to connect, you need to, yeah, it has a third-party connector that you need to install. But again, ultimately, you'll be asked to basically write the server name as well as the database name, and that will be it. Okay, so this is how you can bring the data from any database into Power BI. Okay, be it anything, or let's say if it is Synapse Data Lake, which normally most of the companies use right now. So for that also, the process is similar. You just type Synapse here, and yeah, this is the one, Azure Synapse Analytics SQL. Connect to this, and again you'll be asked to write the server name, database name, or if you want to write this SQL query, you can write that as well. Okay, so the procedure is similar no matter which database you are trying to bring the data from. Is this clear, people?
Yes.
Any doubt in this as far as bringing the data from different data sources into Power BI is concerned? Okay, we'll proceed further then. Okay, now when we bring the data, and yeah, this is only limited to databases. Okay, when we bring the data from databases into Power BI, there are various storage modes that we can use. Okay, the storage modes, if you remember, there are two things. One is the import mode and the direct query mode. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Now, this table that I brought in here from the MySQL, or let's say this table which I brought from the SQL server, I brought in the import mode. Okay, let me show you what exactly I mean. Okay, I'll delete everything. Okay. I'll start afresh so that you can see the difference from yourselves. So delete from the model. I'll just keep this one. And I'll remove this CSV file as well. Okay. So in this instance, let this sales file be there. I'll open one more Power BI instance. Okay. And in this, I'll try to bring the data in direct query mode, and I'll tell you the important differences between the two. I'll open the blank report, and then I'll go to get data, then SQL Server, then as usual, I need to enter the server name. So the server name is this, the SQL Server name. It will be different for your case. So this is server name, and the database name is Adventure Works 2012. Okay. And now, look, instead of bringing the data in the import mode, which is by default, I'll click the second one, that is direct query. I'll click on this and I'll click on OK. And then afterwards, what I'll do is I'll select the table that I want to bring in. Okay. And while bringing in the table, I'll select the exact table that I brought in other instance, that is sales.sales order detail. And I'll directly load it into Power BI. Okay. And once I do that, you will see certain difference. Okay. Now let me show you what the difference exactly is. Okay. Now the sales.sales order table that I brought in the second instance via direct query mode. For this, the main thing that you'll notice here is there is no table view. Can you see this? There's no table view. There's only model view, the report view, and then there is the DAX query view. Whereas for the instance where I brought it in the import mode, you can see the table view, right? And in the table view, you can actually see the data. Okay. Now, let's discuss the difference between the import mode, where I brought it in the first instance, and the direct query mode, by which I brought it in the second instance. So the first thing first, when you bring the data in Power BI in the import mode, what happens is that the data is actually in Power BI. And when I say the data is in Power BI, this table which you're seeing is brought into Power BI, and Power BI makes use of a compressor to compress the data. It is called as Vertipack Compressor Engine, VERTIPAQ, Vertipack Compressor Engine, to compress the data a bit, okay? But ultimately, this data is in Power BI is what matters for us. It is actually imported, okay? And important thing to be noted here is that now we have brought the data into Power BI, and the original sources, anyone? The original source for this data is where it resides. Yeah, where is
SQL
it?
Server.
SQL Server. Okay. Now, let's say,
So, sir, like when we import the data, so Power BI have some default storage system, or it's top
yes,
of SQL Server itself.
no,
Okay.
no, no. It is stored in Power BI itself. Okay. So that's what I'm saying. When you bring it in
So
import mode, come
how
again.
much data we store? How much data we can store?
See, you can store, it depends on the type of license that you have. Okay. If you have premium per user license, you can, in one PBIX, you can store the data up till 10 GB. Okay. Is that clear?
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Mm. So now, yeah, let's say I brought the data in Power BI in import mode, and the data is actually, the original data is residing in SQL, okay, SQL database. Now let's say in the backend, that is in the SQL, some changes happen with respect to that particular table. Let's say certain columns got deleted, or certain columns are removed, certain rows are added, okay. That will not impact the instance that is there in Power BI until and unless you press this button, that is the refresh button. Okay. Only when you refresh the data, that's when this data will actually get refreshed. Else, what will happen? This will stay as it is. Is it clear, people? Yes or no? Shall I explain it once again?
Yeah, sir. Can you please?
Yeah. Now let's see. Okay. I'll try to open the Google Sheets, and then I'll try to explain. So that'll make more sense. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Now let's say your data, the backend data is in SQL. So, okay. And your front end is basically Power BI. Okay. You are getting some table. Let's call that table sales table from SQL Server to Power BI. Okay. Now, what I mean is when you use the import mode. Now, what I said about the import mode, the inherent characteristic of import mode, can anyone repeat? What is that? What happens in the import mode? Yes. No one remembers? Let me repeat. In import mode, the data actually is imported into Power BI, or basically is stored in Power BI. Okay. Now, when we use the import mode, okay, and let's say in the backend, we do some transformations on this sales table. Let's say we remove certain columns, and then let's say we add some new data, in this is new records. Okay, we add some new records into this. Okay, then if you just do it in the back end, the front end will not be impacted. The front end table will be same as you brought it earlier. It will not be impacted by these two steps that you did here. Is it clear, people, or not?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Now, if you want to see these changes in the front end as well, then what you need to do, then you need to what? You need to just click
Refresh.
on the refresh button. Okay. If you click on refresh button, that table will be loaded from backend to front end once again. And when you load from backend to front end once again, then what will happen? This table will be there. And these steps, that is where you remove the columns and added some new data, everything will be updated, and the same will be coming in what? Front end itself. Now you understood what I'm trying to say? Yes or
Yes,
no?
sir.
Okay. Now,
So suppose in view you are saying like if we fetch data through view, so view properties like that, like it's auto update. If we certain transformation do on source table, so it will be auto update on sync side. So that time we also need to refresh, or it automatically.
yeah, we need to refresh
Update.
only. If you are in import mode, you have to manually refresh. Okay.
Okay. Why
Because
that's
the
if
view that you have stored in SQL is different, but the view that you have brought in Power BI is the older view. Understanding the point?
okay, got it.
Okay. So yeah, it's like this. Okay. Now, let's talk about one more mode of storage, that is direct query. Okay. Now, in direct query, that is in second instance, in this instance, what happens is, now first thing, the way you can identify a particular table or a particular PBIX instance works on direct query mode is that in direct query mode, you cannot see the table view. Okay. You see here, the table view is not present. Okay. All you can see is, you can see the type, the columns that are available in this table just by the names of it. Apart from that, you cannot do anything. Now, the thing about the direct query mode is that in direct query mode, the data actually doesn't come into Power BI. It's not imported. Okay. Then what happens? In direct query mode, you just establish the connection between front end and back end. Okay. Now let me just try to explain this. Okay. So now in direct query mode, let's say if you have brought the data again from SQL into PBI, then the thing is, the data actually doesn't come from or doesn't get imported from here to here. The data stays in SQL itself. Then what is done? You just establish the connection from front end to back end. Okay. The data stays in SQL itself. However, in Power BI, you have just established the connection from here to here. Okay. So that kind of connection we call it as, or that kind of storage we call it as direct query mode. Okay. An important point to be noted here is that in direct query mode, if you make any changes to data in the back end, those will be immediately reflected in the front end. Okay. No need to even press the refresh button. If you do any changes here, the same will be reflected here. Because ultimately the thing is that the data is not in Power BI, the data is in SQL. Is it clear, people?
Yes.
Yes or no? Okay. Now, I'll tell you one important thing. Okay. So why the direct query mode? Okay. So what Microsoft people they did was they found out that in some of the projects, the data that has been brought into Power BI, let's say it surpasses uh, the memory usage. Okay, let's say it has kind of, let's say, billions of rows. Okay, it has tables which has billions of rows, and the memory is huge. Okay, and when the memory is huge, if you try to use the import mode, what happens is in import mode, you have to bring the data into Power BI, right? So it will bring the row by row, data row by row in the sense not as slow as you are thinking. It'll bring it in a fast way itself. But still, if it has billions of rows, then it will take time for the data to be loaded into Power BI. Okay. And let's say if we are trying to refresh the data, the refresh time will be somewhere around 15 minutes to half an hour. Okay. If you want to avoid that particular thing, the refresh time, then what you can do, you can use this direct query mode. In the direct query mode, there's no, there's no bringing the data from here to here because the data stays in SQL itself. You are just establishing the connection. Okay. So no matter how big the data is, there's no problem in bringing that into Power BI because ultimately you are just establishing the connection. Okay. But this has its own disadvantages. Now, what are the disadvantages? Disadvantage is that for you to work in direct query mode in Power BI, the SQL server should always keep running in correct way. Let's say if SQL server gets down or it gets slow, your front end also will get slow. And the reason is the data still is here. It's not in Power BI. And one more thing, in Power BI, the important thing is that if you have brought the data in direct query mode, you cannot see the tables by yourself. Okay, the table view, you cannot see it in Power BI, whereas in import mode, you can see it in the table view, whereas in direct query mode, that is not available. Then there are few more differences, like you cannot use certain DAX functions. Like there are very important DAX functions called as time intelligence functions, where you can manipulate the data with respect to date time. Okay, those time intelligence functions you cannot use in direct query mode, and this is a huge setback. Okay, and similarly, you cannot use some other DAX functions as well. Okay, so these are some of the disadvantages of direct query mode. Okay, so I'll tell you practically what happens across the organizations. Even though Microsoft, they themselves suggest that you can use the direct query mode when the data size is huge, ultimately the business ends, they end up using this itself, the import mode itself, because the business end is okay if the data refresh is taking somewhere around 15 to 20 minutes. However, the business end will not be okay if the kind of customization that is available or kind of functions that are available in the import mode are not available in the direct query mode. And one more thing, you should never be dependent on the backend server. If the backend server is slow, the front end should be fast because ultimately the business end or the clients will be looking at your front end dashboards. Okay, so no matter your SQL server in the backend is slow or it's lagging, your front end will always remain fast if you are bringing the data in the import mode. Okay, so in 90% of the time, you will see that people will end up using the import mode in the organizations. Very rarely they'll use the direct query mode. Is it clear, people?
Yes, sir. It present that direct query mode?
Come again?
Where it present the direct query mode? Where in Power BI?
In Power BI. Okay. I mean, when I brought the table, right, did you see that? Let's say if I connect to SQL Server, the server name here, can you see? This
Oh, direct. Yeah, yeah, got it.
import or direct query, okay? So
And
here I'm
in
putting
direct
in
query,
direct query.
okay, in advance we need to write that query, right?
In the advanced, we need to write the DAX query. I mean, not the DAX query, SQL query. Okay.
Yeah.
In advanced, you can write the SQL query. Okay.
If I'm not write that query, so it will import whole data,
It will import the whole table, not whole
full
data.
table.
I'll show you what will happen. I'll just do it once again so that uh, you're clear on that. Okay. So let's say I'll delete this. Okay. I'll delete this. I'll bring it once again all together. So I'll click on get data, SQL Server. Okay. And server name, that is this one. Where is it here? Server name, Control V, and database name, Adventure Works 2012. Okay. And let's say you are using either import mode or direct query mode. You can write the SQL query, but if you don't write the SQL query, then what will happen? If you click on import or even direct query and click on OK, you'll be given access to all the tables that are there in that database. Okay, so let me show you. If you look into this AdventureWorks 2012 database, right, these many tables and views are there in this. So all those tables, you'll be having access here as well. You can bring any view directly as you want. Is it clear?
Yeah, got it, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. So yeah, this is what about the direct query mode and the import mode. Okay. And actually, I have included that details, I mean, further differences in this particular uh, uh, presentation. So go through all these differences. Okay. So with respect to performance, with respect to size of the data, how these two things are different. Okay. So please go through this I'll be sharing with you guys anyways. Okay. So one more thing, apart from just direct query mode and import mode, there are two more modes. One is called as live connection. Let me repeat. Another is called as live connection. Now, what is the live connection? Okay, I'll tell you. Live connection is similar to direct query. You can say it is almost like direct query. Only difference is that in live connection, you'll get the data in the analytical form, or it's also called as cube form, the data which is in cube form. And this kind of data, where you'll get it from? You'll get it from the sources like Azure Databricks or maybe SQL Server reporting services. I hope you guys have heard about SSRS, right? So from those sources, you'll get the data in the analytical form or the cube form. Okay. So that is the only difference between live connection and direct query. Live connection and direct query are same, apart from the fact that in live connection, you'll get the data in the cube form. That's it. Okay. And to just give you a basic idea of what the data in the cube form will look like, I'll just show you. Okay. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but let me just try to show it to you, the data in the cube form. Now, look, so here, if you look at this cube, right, okay, it has actually 3 dimensions to it. The thing is, it's a table, people, okay? And what is it doing? Look, if you look at the y-axis, what kind of information we have? The type of product, right? Whether it's accessories, it's bikes or clothing or components. Okay. And if you look at the z-axis, what do we have here? Anyone? What is the z-axis giving us the detail about?
Years
The
and
timeline,
days.
right?
Yeah.
Jan 2015, Feb 2015, March 2015, so on. Okay. And if I come to x-axis, it says measures. Now, when I say measures, what kind of detail I'll be having? The measures or facts like, let's say, sales amount, order quantity, let's say return quantity. Okay. Let's say profit margin. Okay. So these will be the details which will be measures. Let's say this is sales amount. This particular cube or x-axis of this cube belongs to sales amount. Then what does this particular cube describe? Can anyone tell me? If this is the sales amount, can you tell me the kind of data it is giving me? Or what is the meaning of this cube?
Year-wise component sale.
Exactly. It is giving me the detail that is in 2015 Jan, what is the sales of components, right? Is it clear, people? So this kind of data you will be having when the data is in cube form. Okay. So that is what the live connection is all about. Okay. Then that is about the live connection. And then there is one more storage mode, which I told. Okay. And that is called as the composite mode. Okay. Now, what is composite mode? Let me talk about it. The composite mode is when some of the data comes in the direct query mode, or some of the tables are in direct query mode, and some of the tables are in import mode. That's when we call it the composite mode. Okay, composite model is when some of the tables come in direct query mode and others come in import mode. Okay, now important thing to be noted here is that the direct query mode or live connection, okay, these are applicable only for the databases. Okay, however, when you are bringing the data from the files like CSV or flat files or Excel workbooks, the direct query mode is not available. Okay, because to be frank, we cannot write the query in Excel, right, or to CSV or flat file. Okay, so when you're bringing the Excel sheet or CSV or flat file, only import mode is available, not the direct query mode. Is it clear, people?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That
I hope.
analytical mode or that cube mode is any data file formats are there or same file format are working here?
Come again.
In analytical mode and cube mode, you say na, and we fetch
Mhm.
data through Snap SQL Server here through
Mhm.
Snap.
Mhm.
So those are in cube mode and analytical mode. So those are imported old data types similar like CSV flat files or JSON
No,
kind of
no,
things.
no.
And
No, live connection also is only for the databases. Okay. Not for CSV flat files. Okay.
okay, those are important. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. CSV or flat files or Excel workbooks, only import mode, nothing else. Okay. When we talk about the database, only then is when we talk about the direct query or live connection or composite mode. Okay. Yeah. I hope
Yeah.
everyone is clear on how to bring the data from different sources into Power BI. Any doubts on that, people?